Good afternoon, students. You are back for another wonderful day in American history. Today we're going to be studying the legislative branch. I've got some kind of cool things that hopefully will grab your interest. This will be a topic that's easy for you to identify with. To start off with, of course, we have to go over our objectives. I know you get sick and tired of hearing these, but again, you'll be hopefully repeating them in your sleep. Explain how power is distributed among individuals and branches of government. And then, of course, explain the reasoning behind the separation of powers in the checks and balance system. This is going to take place, obviously, over our unit plan. And then I always make goals for your kids. You guys are awesome at it. Students will develop a real-life scenario that would fall under the legislative branch as outlined in the Constitution with 80% proficiency. I know how much you guys like to role play and act, listen to music and jump around and get excited about things, so I'm giving you another chance to do that. So again, we've got 2 objectives and 1 goal. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about something that's called a Mandatory Education Act. And when FDR, everybody knows who FDR is, right? Sally? Franklin D. Roosevelt, that's correct. When he was in office, he wrote a law that required all students, now keep in mind this was a while ago, by the ages 5 to 16 to attend school. And it was a law, you had to do it. And therefore, I want you to tell me how you can repeal the Mandatory Education Act. Where would you start? So if you didn't like that law, I'm sure some of you do not, how would you go about getting it not passed? So what you're going to do is you're going to turn your shoulder partner and brainstorm ideas, and then after a few minutes we will share with the class. So again, remember the Mandatory Education Act was written by Franklin D. Roosevelt, and it was a law requiring all students to go to school the ages of 5 through 16. Now, obviously that's changed for us, and let's pretend like we don't agree with it, so we're going to repeal it. So find your shoulder partner and go ahead and get started on it. At this point, I would be, again, generating around my room, listening to students talk, make sure that they are on task, talking about the topic. If they need help getting started, I would hopefully be able to give them ideas, keep them on task, make sure that they were getting a clear picture of what I wanted them to work on and whatnot. So 5 minutes would probably be all I allow for this, 5-6 minutes. I'm sure a lot of them will have a lot to say. Okay, coming back to class, who would like to share how they would repeal the Mandatory Education Act? Okay, that's a good idea. Johnny, what'd you and your partner come up with? Awesome. Jeff? Oh, you didn't have quite finished? Okay, well that's okay, because by the end of the class, hopefully you'll be able to come up with something. Anybody else want to talk about it? Thank you. So basically what you would have to do is the topic would have to go to a committee in the House of Representatives. And then members of the committee would discuss it and decide whether to put it before the House for a vote. If the members vote to repeal the law, it would then be sent to the Senate. The Senate committee would review the action and decide whether to put it before the entire Senate for a vote. Then, if the Senate passes the action, it is then sent to the President, and the President can sign the action into a law and repeal the Mandatory Education Act, or if he disagrees, he can veto the action, sending it back to Congress. However, Congress can override the veto with a 2/3 majority vote. So you can't just say, we don't like this law, we don't want it anymore. Cross it off. One person can't just say, we don't want it. The House of Representatives just can't say they don't want it. The president can't just say, there's a process of steps that it takes to get something repealed. So anyway, I thought you would probably like that because some of you absolutely love school and love being with Mrs. Wills. And some of you absolutely don't love school but still love being with Mrs. Wills. So I thought it'd be a good topic to start because that's what the legislative branch does. They start the lawmaking process. So with that in mind, I want to show you, and I think you'll really like it, hopefully. It's actually a song, but I only chose the legislative part of the song to show you guys, to help you identify with what truly are, to identify the probably 8 or 9 components that make up the legislative branch. It's a rap, so I know you guys will all be excited about that. So let's get this going. Hopefully it just comes up.
Legislative branch has 2 parts, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now the House of Representatives must live in the state they are representing, elected every 2 years to fill 435 seats. Must be a citizen for 7 years at least, 25 years of age. Number of reps depend on state's population. Now the Senate, at least 9 years must be a citizen. Live in the state they are representing, must be at least 30. 6-year terms every 2 years, elect 1/3. The vice president is the president of the Senate, 100 senators, 2 per state. The vice president is the president of the Senate, 100 senators, 2 per state. This is our government, this is our government, this is where we live. 3 parts of government, executive, judicial, legislative.
Okay, so that's the legislative part of the song. I know you're all disappointed that I didn't get to play the whole thing for you. We can listen to that at another time of review. Some of you are aspiring to be rap artists yourself, so maybe you can rap about the government. So with that in mind, I have a couple questions for you. How many branches are there in the legislature? Who can tell me? Sally? That's right, 2, the Senate and the House of Representatives. How do you become a member of either? Anybody know? Jill? Must be elected by vote of the people. And then was interested in knowing how long the term is for Senate and then the House. That's right, the Senate is 4 and the House is 2. Let's see what else. What are some of the duties of Congress? Any idea? Casey? Finances. Awesome. Wyatt? Declare war. Good job. Ethan? Generate new laws. You've been reading your book. Awesome. Madeline? Correct. Override presidential veto. So good job. Those are just some. We'll list a few more here. And I want to talk about age. How old do you have to be to run for Senate? Any idea? No, not 18. No, not 25. For Senate, you must be 30, but for the House, you can be 25. So just questions that I thought would be good to ask you kids over that little rap. So I thought that was pretty cool. Moving on, we're going to open our textbooks to page 209. Okay. Some things I want you to think about. It relates to what's currently going on in the news as we read, and also relates to the initial startup of the legislative branch. Okay. So as we read this little part on the legislative branch, which would be on page 209. And then we're also going to talk about how the British system of government was formed and how the Magna Carta in 1215 it placed its limits on power. Okay, so first I want you to look at page 209, read the legislative branch to yourself. In doing this, I want you to think about what part will the legislator play in replacing the Supreme Court Justice Scalia, the man that just died, the Supreme Court Justice Scalia, 79 years old. So you're going to read that, and then I also want you to think, what are the different opinions being argued by the Democratic members and the Republican members of Congress? Democrats saying this, Republican is saying this. So I want you to read pages 208 through 209, and then we'll come back and I'll have you do another little activity. So at this point, I would be walking around the classroom. I move around a lot. And I would make sure that they're on the correct page number. They're reading the correct stuff I assigned. This class is a really good class. It's probably the more advanced kids. That's why this is a higher ended lesson. And I never have problems really with them staying on task or getting off task or flipping through the books or messing with other things. This class is a good class. They do just about anything I tell them to do. They'd be reading and trying to formulate the answers. They might want me to repeat the questions, which I would do probably several times. Make sure that you answer this question about Scalia, this question about the Republicans and Democrats. So the different opinions. And a lot of times I would have them read independently, but this class also as well likes to read out loud, and so may ask for a volunteer or someone that wants to read and discuss. So, and that it would be in the American history textbooks. Sorry, I didn't say that. This is our good old book. It's about way too many years old. Time for new curriculum. Anyway, and then from there, I would bring the class back together. Okay, so once you guys have read the passages and been thinking about the answers to the questions that I asked you, specifically about replacing Supreme Court Justice Scalia, and again the different opinions argued by the Democratic members and the Republican members of Congress. Okay? Now, I want you to turn to your 2 o'clock, or the partner on your left. Everybody know what their left hand is? This one, L. Anyway, I know that's pretty elementary, but sometimes you have to remind your kids. And I want you to share the reading of the section of the British system of government. So at this time, I want you to get with your partners on the left. I want you to reread the section on the British system of government. Okay? And then there's some things that I would like you to answer as you read and discuss with your partner. So while you're reading, I'm going to quickly write these down. Just because I erase your goal doesn't mean you can't get away with not meeting it. Question number 1 is going to be, explain how the Magna Carta helped the founding fathers as they developed a new system of government. Okay, so this is the first question. I like how you guys are reading independently but yet together. This is the first thing that when you finish the little section, I would like for you to work together and answer. And as you guys are discussing this topic, I'll put 2 more things up here, or actually 3 more things. 3 more questions or thoughts I'd like you to be able to answer. Okay, name 2 important philosophers who influenced the architects of the Constitution. Why did the authors want a check and balance system? That's something else. And last thought I'd like for you to touch on is what part does the legislative branch play in the new system, in this new system? Okay. Okay, so as they get together as partners, they would discuss these questions. Most of the time for this group, I just put everything up on the board. It's the advanced group. Don't need to give them handouts or anything like that. Most of the time I try to have this stuff written out before they came in, but since I'm only using one board right now, I had to do a little shifting of stuff. So I'd bring the class back together. Okay, class, let's come back together and let's discuss. We would go through these 4 questions together and come up with good answers and a different variety of answers, how people see and took the information from the textbook. So from that point, I would review with the students again, try to come up with a list of 8 or 9 components of the legislative branch. So Sally, can you give me one example of what the legislative branch does? Writes laws, good job. Beth, declares war, awesome. Casey, U.S. Capitol, and consists of 2 houses, that's correct. Jeff, approves treaties. George, yes, it is established by Article 1. Caden, approves the budget, of course. Lakota, of course, it overrides presidential veto. Again, the term is how many years? 2 to 6. And they like the power of being able to impeach the president. So those are the characteristics of the legislative branch. So, who can summarize the main points of today's lesson? And then who has a question or something maybe that isn't clear about today's lesson as well? Okay. For your independent practice, I want you to name the 2 senators and the 4 congressmen who represent Iowa at the national level. And that way you'll be able to go ahead and head back to the computer cart and go ahead and search that. The 2 senators and the 4 congressmen that represent Iowa at the national level. 2 and 4 senators in Congress. So at this time, I would allow them to get computers, and which this group really loves to work with computers. Like I said, they're pretty advanced in technology. These kids are a lot more technology savvy than most of us teachers. So they would come up with some pretty good research and answers. Some would probably take it a little bit more in depth than the others, but it's fun to watch these kids work for sure. And then the assessment, what I would have them do, and this class really likes to do it, is I would have them organize a group, and that they'll write a skit or a scenario to demonstrate their level of knowledge about the legislative branch. So they would be up. This group doesn't have a hard time picking partners or anything like that. They get along really well and like to do things like this. And sometimes it's hard at the middle school level because sometimes when they get up and get moving, they're kind of silly. But pretty blessed with this group of kids that I'm working with, and they like to put on skits and good shows and that kind of thing. So that's kind of how I would run this lesson of the legislative branch. And then as the class leaves, I would have them fill out an exit card, so again summarizing today's main points of the lesson. Maybe ask if there was any questions that they might have or they want me to clarify on. And then I would also want them to come up with 2 laws that they should feel would be repealed. So most of them will probably skip right to the last end of the process because this, like I said, this group is a really intelligent group and we really get into the political aspect of history. And so they would look into the 2 laws that they feel would be repealed. So that's my lesson on the legislative branch. I know it's a little bit different than the first lesson I gave you. I guess maybe I was a little bit more relaxed this time. I don't know. I will say it is a tad bit challenging when you're sitting here in an empty room with empty desks. So again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to teach. See you later.